Hey friends, welcome back. So, one of the hobbies I have outside of ham radio is I collect antique radios, and mostly from the 1930s and up. And I have a small to modest collection of them. It's kind of addictive once you start collecting them, but all of them have tubes. I have a couple of transistor radios in my collection, but not too many. Most of them have tubes, so they all glow. And some work and some don't, and some are in various states of restoration. One of which was a console radio. It's a Mantola console. It was my great-grandfather's radio. I picked it up when I was a teenager at his estate sale. And I think my grass mowing money paid for it. It was like $8. So I picked it up and I've had it ever since. And so I decided at one point, I'm going to restore this thing to its former glory. And so back during COVID, I started with what I thought might be the easiest part of the whole project, or maybe the most complicated part of the whole project, was the antenna box that was mounted behind the speaker in the cabinet. And you'll see those in those pictures I posted of the radio itself. This is it. And what was inside of this thing was an antenna loop. And there were Litz wires that came up to the top to a terminal up here that goes to the radio. And then inside this box, there were 4 dowels on each corner and a support in the middle. And then the wire basically formed a square loop which tuned up with the variable capacitor in the radio. And that formed the tuning circuit for the radio itself. And so this was the original box. You can see it says this set equipped with aeroscope and electrostatic shield. Well, what is that? Well, this was something that was an Admiral thing. This radio was actually made by Admiral. And this was actually their script, their stencil script that they use quite a bit in their radios. And I think they use this aeroscope on other models of the radios as well. But the electrostatic shield meant that inside this box were a bunch of wires, and they ran the full length of the box, and they're spaced about 1/4 inch apart. And they're pressed between some thin craft paper and this cardboard. And they're kind of glued in place. And then they're all electrically connected to form a electrostatic shield around the entire box. So that's pretty cool. So I decided to tackle this myself. To start with that, I had to find the cardboard needed to make this box. And as you can see, this is all one piece. This is a full length piece of cardboard, top to bottom. And then all these folds were made in here. And then the thing was assembled from that. I don't have cardboard that's that size. There's nothing that big. I found this piece of cardboard. This is actually chipboard, and I bought this at Hobby Lobby. It's about 3/32 thick. I'm not sure what the metric size of this is, thickness-wise, but you'll find this back in the matting section, the poster board section, back in the frame area. There are slots where this is kept, and I haven't seen this recently, but this is great chipboard, and I picked up a few sheets of this. This is the last one I have of this. It makes great radio backs for those Bakelite radios. If you want to make a hard back for your Bakelite radio, this is perfect. It'll definitely replace a lot of those because of the same thickness. But I used it for this antenna box, and I had to make 2 halves of the box. So you'll see in the pictures what I did then was I made 2 halves. I made a front half and a back half, and I had to basically attach them at the bottom, lap them over each other and attach them at the bottom. And what I did is I laid them on a piece of foam board. And then to run the wires, I put nails along each edge, top and bottom, and I zigzagged the wires back and forth in a zigzag pattern to space them about 1/4 inch apart. And then what I did is I put craft paper on top. So I put a layer of wood glue down over the wires on the chipboard. Then I took the craft paper and I laid the craft paper down over top of the wires. And then I put some books on top and weighted it down and pressed it down and left it dry overnight. I did both halves this way. And then I lapped the 2 pieces together at the bottom, folded it up, and put it together. Now to form the folds and do the creases, I actually used my sheet metal brake. I have a 24-inch wide Diacro sheet metal brake and shear. And I used my sheet metal brake to actually form the creases in the cardboard, so it made it easier to fold. And then I folded it together, and you'll see the picture there with the clothespins are actually holding it together and keeping it together while I stapled everything together with a box stapler. A heavy-duty box stapler. And then I had to create the stencil. So what I did to create the stencil for the front was I actually took the old box and I laid it down in a wide format flatbed scanner, and I scanned this in, and then I brought the picture into 2D CAD, behind a layer in 2D CAD. And then on a Sunday afternoon or something, I must have painstakingly went through and basically redrew every single outline of this entire stencil in 2D CAD and connected everything together. And then what I did is I split it down the middle. I kind of zigzagged through it. I had to split it somehow in half because I had to basically create two separate pieces of the stencil. Because what I did is I put it into 3D CAD, and I did an extrude of each half and made it 30 thousandths thick. And then I created an STL file out of that. I put it in my 3D printer. My Ender 3 could only print so much at a time, so I had to print half and then another half. So I printed a 30 thousandths left and right side stencil, and I glued the two together and created one large stencil then to put on the box. Then I spray painted the box silver, got some silver spray paint, gave it 2 or 3 coats of silver paint to make it look like the original. And then I got brown spray paint, laid the stencil down on top of the box, and then very carefully went over lightly spraying it to give it a stencil-like look. And then as a result of that, what I ended up with was this. This is the finished product. So you can see the stencil here that was sprayed on. You can see where the dowels are here based on where the screw locations are. The coil's inside here. The top are the terminals, and the Litz wire coming up here from the antenna coil attaches to these terminals, and then the wires come down from the radio and attach into these. And this forms the tuning loop for the tuning capacitor in the radio. This forms the main AM broadcast tuning loop. But this is the box. Heavy duty staples to attach it together. Everything's folded up. I put some masking tape on the corners here to define it, give it a little bit more definition before I spray painted it. Lapped over the bottom here. You can kind of see the wires in here that I soldered together to reattach everything together electrically to put the electrostatic shield in here. And then of course the back side's still unfinished. I didn't spray paint the back. It doesn't matter because you're only going to see this side of it. The speaker's behind the box, but this is the finished product. So this will live on now in the restored radio once I get the cabinet finished and do the restoration on the chassis. But it's basically like new. So out with the old right there and in with the new. So there you go. I hope you got some ideas out of this, especially the 3D printing of the stencil. A few people never even realized you could do that. That was just a new idea to them, that you can actually do an extrude in 3D and create a stencil out of something and then spray paint it on. I don't have the original. It melted. It was PLA, and I left it in the sun by accident after I did this, and so it melted and warped and was no good, so I had to throw it away. But here it is, and hope you got some ideas out of this. Hope you promote you to try this yourself, and hope you learned something. So for now, 73s, and see you next time.